Good morning, sir.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, sir.
I can't.
literally, the word, for example, Tadatil means the place that is prepared for planting the seed, whether it is a tapioca or a mango or a cashew nut or a coconut or a pepper plant. All these are plants amidst which in my childhood I have grown. And within our own property itself, there were locations. One part is a little, let's say, on a higher gradient, almost like a hillock. It is drier, and there the cashew nuts were planted. On the plains part, the coconut trees were planted. And more, let's say, marshy and little bit more wetland kind of place, you have the place where the tomatoes, etc., were planted, or brinjal, or the beans. So I'm just trying to say my historical sense of food system as having been associated with the land, the place, the location in which I grew up. And the bounding our property was a river, and which was a small rivulet in summer, but in monsoon it was quite a huge river, because up in the highlands of the Deccan, at the bottom ranges we lived, during monsoon, entire water would flow. So, land as productive, land as the source of food, is something that each of us, just like I recalled my memories, will go back to the moment you think of food. How, whether you had a small plot of land or big, how your life in that particular place was associated with from where the food came, who brought the food, how much had labor had to go into that food production. So I guess these essentials are very vital for us as an academic community to revisit in these times when we are all the more, made to realize its importance. This is my first point. And my second and final point is, we are in a time of transition. We are talking about now, online existence. We are talking about big data. We are talking about artificial intelligence. We are talking about robotics. We are talking about surviving on the space shuttle for years on. So astronauts have got another kind of food which can be, like capsules consumed. Or the Pentagon has done research on how the fresh sandwich can be preserved for months on end for army or military purpose. So this is a new world. It's a new transition. So how do food systems transition? How do food systems give us sustenance? I guess these are issues that are very fundamental to us, and we are very glad and happy that we have none other than Professor Sohail Firdos with us, with his expertise and with his experience and with his love for the subject of geography, which he has manifested in traveling all the way from Gangtok just for a 1 hour of interview for us in our campus, which I can never forget. Thank you, sir. And with these few words of appreciation to the department for organizing it, and with warm words of welcome to our resource person of the day, over to you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Father. May I now invite Mr. Srijana Sinha, Assistant Professor, Department of Geography, to kindly introduce our speaker to all.
Thank you very much, Srijana, for a very generous welcome and introduction. Uh, Now I have a long association with Salesian College, and I always remember the hospitality that has been provided to me wherever I visited Salesian College, both the campuses of Siliguri as well as Sonada. So thank you, Salesian College, particularly Father George Thadatil, for having me here in this webinar. And I'm also thankful to Dr. Vipul Chetri for inviting me to this webinar. In fact, academically also we are connected with Salesian College because we keep on getting students. And I remember that some of the students are or have done exceedingly well in our department. And I can at least talk of two students who got first and second position in their masters. So I think it gives us a sense of achievement, both at the Department of Geography, and I think it's a moment of pride for Salesian College also. So this is a great to be in kind of contact with Salesian College, and I'm really thankful for providing me this opportunity to speak. Now, coming to the topic on which I'm going to talk, food and land use systems, critical conditions. All of us do experience both the way we consume food, and we also have idea about how land uses are being modified or being affected by the kind of food that we use. In fact, Father George Thadatel already gave a very good introduction in terms of how a number of us are basically located in a particular geographical location, and it gives us a sense of, say, food that's being produced in different locations. So we have great experience ourselves in terms of contributing to this particular topic. Now, what we also know of is that, say, the world population, which is there, and the food that they consume, in fact, do determine the land uses that we have. In fact, I myself, when I trace my childhood to where I am, I see very significant changes in terms of the food that's being consumed by people. In fact, when we were a child, in our villages, chips were nowhere to be seen, in fact. And now, whenever I go to a village, even in a small shop, now there are packets of chips which are being sold, and say children or even adults do consume it. So there's a change in terms of what we call as dietary habits that all of us have been observing and experiencing. And this has really drastically changed the way land is being used globally, regionally, as well as at different locations. So I'll present my but I won't be here. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, that's good.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I hope that this presentation is visible and I'm audible also. Can one of you please confirm?
Yes, sir, we can hear you and we can see the screen too.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and then firstly, I'll define what we mean by food and land use systems. And I'll borrow heavily from a report that has been published in 2019, and the title of this report is Growing Better, 10 Critical Transitions to Transform Food and Land Use. So the term food and land use system covers every factor in the ways land is used and food is produced, stored, packaged, processed, traded, distributed, marketed, consumed, and disposed of. It embraces social, political, economic, and environmental systems that influence and are influenced by those activities. Food from aquatic systems, marine and freshwater, is also included in the definition because fish, wild and farm accounts for a significant share of the protein in human diets, and this share will potentially increase. It also covers agriculture for non-food purposes, such as bioenergy, fibers for textiles, and plantation forestry products, as these already compete with food for fertile land, and the competition could intensify in future. Now, this is a definition that we'll be making use of while understanding food and land use systems and how changing habits of food have led to changes in land uses. In fact, there are two parts of this presentation. In the first part, I'll be talking about primarily agricultural land. And in the second part, I'll be talking about how urban land is also driving the transformation in land use. So there'll be two different sections. And then finally, I'll also try to basically conclude from both these two different sections. So firstly, how we use land. Now, if you see the distribution of Earth's surface in terms of how it's being used and what percent of it is being used for different purposes, and then we also try to see the function that have been performed, then what we see that around 25% of Earth's surface is land, while remaining 75% account for oceans, ice, or lakes. Now, when you come to land surface, 79% are arable and natural land, while 21% is dedicated to urban, barren, and non-arable land. Now, when you come to arable and natural land, only 30% of these are agriculture, 37% are forest, while 31% are natural ecosystem, which are so crucial in terms of providing the services so that we can survive. Now, when you come to agricultural land, 62% of this land is dedicated to livestock rearing. Only 38% is dedicated for crop production. In fact, when you talk about food production, it's both food production for human consumption as well as we're also talking about feed production that we use to feed livestock so that we can consume protein from such livestock. Now, when we talk about food calorific supply for global consumption, what we know is that 83% comes from plants and oceans, while 17% comes from meat and dairy. When we talk about food protein supply for global consumption, what we know is that 33% comes from meat and dairy, while 66% of protein comes from plants and ocean. It's important because often we think that most of the protein comes from meat. Now, given this scenario of land use and the different functions that are being performed by land, let's try to anchor why this particular understanding is important for us. When we talk about anchoring point, firstly, land suitable for producing food is scarce natural resource and vital to human civilization. In fact, the emergence of human civilization also took place on land. Had it not been land, I think the entire emergence as well as subsequent development of human civilization would not have been possible. And when we talk about degradation in land, that's why we say that possibly this process may threaten the existence of humans also. So today, growing demand for productive land is eroding the natural ecosystems that are essential not only to human life, but also to all life on Earth. Decisions on how human societies use land, what food and other products we grow, and what we do to protect and restore natural ecosystems are thus fundamental to human development and our planet's future. And arguably, they are as fundamental as the future of our energy systems. Now, what we also know is that there's substantial stress on fresh water. So agriculture is responsible for over 70% of global freshwater withdrawal, contributing significantly to the freshwater stress affecting 2 billion people today. So you can imagine the kind of the number of people who are affected by this. Moreover, competition for water from agriculture, urbanization, industrialization, and population growth will increase its stress in the future. By 2050, half of the world's population will live in water-stressed areas. India, for example, has 4% of global freshwater resources to support 19% of the global population. 80% of India's fresh water is used in agriculture. But there's a significant effect on the health of ocean also due to agriculture. Now, when you consider this, specifically agriculture wastewater, it affects ocean health and the quality of many freshwater lakes, rivers, and aquifers as agrochemicals, organic matter, drug residues, and sediments cause contamination. Agriculture is the single largest producer of wastewater by volume, and livestock generate far more excreta than do humans. So we do generate excreta, and livestock also do far more than what we do. In addition, as land use has intensified, countries have greatly increased the use of synthetic pesticides, fertilizers, and other inputs. Excess fertilizer washing out of farmland is accumulated in the ocean and creating dead zones, such as the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, that is about the size of New Jersey. So one can imagine the kind of dead zones that are being created because of carrying away of pesticides from land to the ocean. Having said this, let's also try to understand what is the contribution of agriculture, forestry, and fishing to the economy. And when you see across different countries, like low-income countries, middle-income countries, and high-income countries. So what we have here is share of GDP, share of employment, value-added employee versus national average, share of investment, share of export, share of imports, percentage of global food production. So when you see low-income countries, then what we see is that 25% of their GDP comes from agriculture, while in middle-income countries, only 8% comes from it, while in high-income countries, only 1% of the GDP comes from agriculture. Now, if you see the share of employment, it's more staggering. 63% of the people in the low-income countries are engaged in agriculture, while 30% in middle-income countries, while only 3% are employed in agriculture in high-income countries. Now, when you talk about value add or employees versus national average, then once again, in low-income countries, 37% comes from here. In middle-income countries, 21%, while in high-income countries, 52%. That means value that has been added per employee is very high in developed countries as compared to low-income or middle-income countries. And if we once again look into the share of investment, so low-income countries, around 8% of investment is there, while in middle-income countries, only 5%, while in high-income countries is 2%. Now, share of exports is once again very important. So 40% of the exports in the low-income countries comes from agriculture, while in middle income countries, only 13% comes from agriculture, while in high income countries, 9% comes from here. And when you talk about share of imports, then 16% of imports, in fact, in low income countries, they are from agriculture, 9% in middle income countries, while 8% in high income countries. And when you talk about percentage of global food production, then 3% of total production comes from low income countries, 72% from middle income countries, while 26% comes from high income countries. So we can see the disparities which are there across different countries in terms of share of GDP, employment, and import, export, as well as global food production from this table. Now, once we have talked about the global scenario, let's focus our attention on India. Now, when you talk about agricultural land in India, according to a World Bank report, about 60% of India's land area may be classified as agricultural land. Total area under operational holdings was 159.6 million hectares as per last agriculture census that took place in 2010 and 11. However, the National Sample Survey Organization, that is NSSO, report on land and livestock holdings estimate that around 95 million hectares of land was classified as operational holding in 2012 and 13. More importantly, small land holding sizes of less than 1 hectare of land constitutes 2/3 of agricultural land holdings in India, and this is a matter of grave concern in our country. Now, when we are saying that a very large number of holdings are in a marginal category, why this has happened is all because of fragmentation of agricultural land, and once again, this is a major concern in our country. Extreme fragmentation of agricultural land is the root cause of poverty in India, and the fact that fragmentation continues to grow more intense is the singular challenge of Indian development. With the continuing fragmentation of land holding to an average size that was down to 1.15 hectares in 2010 and 11, the primary source of income of marginal and small farmers is wages and not cultivation. This is as per a finding that had come from a research done by Sanjay Chakrabarti. But when we see distribution of land holdings by size starting with 1971 to 2010 and 11, what we are seeing here is that this curve is for marginal holdings, and then this last one is for large holdings. So what we are seeing here is that the number of holdings which are marginal, they are increasing very, very steadily, starting with 1970 to 2010 and 11. On the other hand, the number of holdings which are large, they have remained more or less stagnant, or the number has come down, if you see this dark curve here. So it's basically suggesting that smaller holding, marginal holdings are increasing while large holdings are declining in our country. Similarly, when we see area of land by holding sizes, what we are seeing is that this dark curve is for large holding, and if we see the area under such holdings, they are steadily declining, starting from 1970-71 till 2010 and 11, while the land which is there under marginal farmers, this is increasing, so is to it small land holding. So it's basically what it indicates is that larger farms are getting fragmented as the years pass by. It's more due to pressure on agricultural land, and as the members of family increases, so the land distribution also takes place. Now, this table is once again very interesting in terms of quantity and share of average monthly income from different sources by size class of land owned. This is once again from a data for 2013. And if you see, the first column is showing size class of land owned. So it's below 0.01 hectare, then 0.01 to 0.40 hectare. and then above 10 hectares, which are basically large holdings, and these are marginal holdings. And if you see the net receipts from income from wages, cultivation, farming of animals, non-farm business, and total income of the household and the consumption, then what we see that 64% of the average monthly income comes from wages and not for cultivation. Cultivation contributes just 1% of say monthly income, while farming of animals, once again, livestock plays an important role in small and marginal land holdings. So 26% of income comes from livestock, while 10% comes from non-farm business. And if you see the income, monthly average income, this is 4,742, while the monthly consumption is 5,179. That means the consumption is higher than the incomes. That means the deficit in the family income, and that's how we often hear that say agriculture has become uneconomic. The return that we get from agriculture is not as much as one invests. It's because of the fact that a large number of land holdings are falling under the category of marginal and small holdings. As the land size goes up, the income goes up, monthly income goes up. So those having 2 to 4 hectares, the monthly income is 10,849, while the consumption is 7,798. So there's a net kind of benefit which is here. So is to in the land holding size 4 to 10 hectares, and moreover in the large holding size, if you see the income is 41,412. So it's much higher than what other land holding size categories have. And then if you see the consumption, then monthly consumption, average consumption is 14,445. So here the profit is much higher. So as the land holding size goes up, the profit from agriculture also goes up, while in the smaller land holding size, the consumption is higher than the income that is being derived from agriculture. Along with this, there's also loss of agricultural land. In fact, the loss of agricultural land to human settlements is far more serious in India. About 1.5 million hectares of land, mostly agriculture, went to urban growth between 1955 and 1985, and further 8 lakh hectares were transformed between 1985 and 2000. I'll come to this part specifically toward the second part of the presentation when we'll be talking about urbanization and how it's affecting land use. But this is once again huge land that's being converted. With the rapid urbanization and extension of urban areas combined with continuing population growth, both agriculture and social scientists have long expressed concern as to whether India will be able to feed its population. As of now, we have surplus food production. We know that a green revolution took place and it helped our country to be self-sufficient in food production. Not only self-sufficient, but we also have surplus buffer of food production. But a number of studies are suggesting that the effect of green revolution, which was increasing yield because of high-yielding seeds, irrigation and chemical fertilizers, now there's plateau in terms of productivity, and it may basically not increase further in terms of the productivity that is there in the land. And there are also concerns about environmental degradation. Leaching of land is taking place in the states where there's a high dose of chemical fertilizers, and that may lead to degradation of land and then decline in the production. Now, talking about this scenario, how agricultural land is there and what kind of degradations are there, let's try to understand why we need to have transformation, because unless we need to have a transformation, we may not be able to sustain it, and it may not be possible to feed the growing numbers of people in the world. So if there's a transformation, what would happen? So with transformation, the scientific evidence and economic case that demonstrates that by 2030, food and land use systems can help bring climate change under control, safeguard biological diversity, ensure healthier diets for all, drastically improve food security, and create more inclusive rural economics. And they can do that while reaping a societal return that is more than 15 times the related investment cost, that is estimated at less than 0.5% of global GDP, and creating new business opportunities worth up to rupees $4.5 trillion a year by 2030. So these are the prospects if we go for transformations. Now, if we don't go for transformation, what would happen is this there on the right box, leaving these systems to continue on current trends, by contrast, means sleepwalking into a scenario wherein climate change, sea level rise, and extreme weather events increasingly threaten human life, biodiversity, and natural resources are depleted. People increasingly suffer life-threatening diet-induced diseases, food security is compromised, and socio-economic development is seriously impaired. Such a pathway would place the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement targets out of reach, and within a few decades threaten our collective security. So we have a choice now in terms of whether we want this transformation to happen or we are to continue like this, so that the adverse effect that I have already talked about, we can continue with that. Now, why then there's a hurry that we need to go for transformation? Why not to wait? Is it necessary that we have to go for transformation immediately, or we can wait? So if we wait, then there are different costs that one has to pay. Firstly, there's environmental cost. Current food and land use systems cause up to 30% of total greenhouse gas emissions, driving climate change, and are the leading cause of the continued conversion of the world's tropical forests, grasslands, wetlands, and other remaining natural habitats, and thus the main culprit of the ongoing what we call a sixth extinction of biodiversity. Then there are health costs. In addition to the direct impact of agricultural pollution on public health, food systems generate widespread malnutrition. More than 820 million people, most of them in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, still regularly go hungry. At the same time, some 680 million adults are obese. So they are opposite of this. There are such a large number of people who are obese, but there are also a large number of people who go hungry without food. On current trends, half of the world population will suffer from malnutrition and related health effects by 2030, placing a heavy financial and operational burden on health services and reducing productive potential. So health costs are there for those who are malnutrition and those who are obese also, because it has been found that those who are obese suffer from different diseases like diabetes, heart diseases. So it puts a burden on state's exchequer. Then there's socioeconomic costs. This perpetuate poverty and inequity. 2/3 of 740 million people living in extreme poverty, that is on less than $1.90 a day purchasing power parity, 2011, are agriculture workers and their dependents. But smallholders participate in markets that are becoming structurally more concentrated. They often receive minimal returns. Coffee farmers earn around 1% of the retail value of a cup of coffee sold on high streets across the world. Underinvested, inequitable food and land use system consign many to lives of constant insecurity. And this is true for the tea cultivation in our country also. Now, having projected the scenario that we have relating to agriculture, what is the way forward? How can we bring in the transformations? So there are 10 critical transitions that have been proposed by Food and Land Use Coalition. This I'm projecting before you for further discussion. So this is in the form of a pyramid. At the top of the pyramid, what we want is the population as well as for the there needs to be what we call nutritious food. That means we want healthy diets. What is happening, people has gone up all over the world, a section of people have changed their food habits. There's more intake of junk food or readily available food, and all the, say, the diets that are good for health get ignored. So there needs to be a healthy diet. Then we are also proposing for nature-based solutions. Under this, we need to have productive and regenerative agriculture. We need to then protecting and restoring nature. And thirdly, a healthy and productive ocean, which is a big supplier of protein to humans. Then the third layer of this pyramid is wider choice and supply. Here, we need to diversify the protein supply. Then we need to reduce food loss and waste. Then there needs to be local loops and linkages. And then at the bottom of this pyramid is we need to have digital revolution to manage both agriculture, land and production and distribution. Then we need to have stronger rural livelihoods. And then there needs to be gender equality, and demography should be also such that it has in these transitions, and this is referred to as opportunity for all. So I'll discuss each one of this in the next 3 slides. So coming to this thin critical transition, in the first column, we have been mentioning what is it that one needs to be doing, and then in the second column, the agencies which should intervene to do this. Firstly, healthy diets. Global diets needs to converge towards local variations of the human and planetary health diet. A predominantly plant-based diet which includes more productive food, that is fruits, vegetables and whole grains, a diverse protein supply, and reduced consumption of sugar, salt and highly processed food. As a result, consumers will enjoy a broader range of high quality, nutritious and affordable food. You might have read in the newspaper that India is considered to be the capital of diabetes, possibly because of wrong food that we do take. And in this, I'm not going to detail how it can be done. So government needs to play an important role along with the business community. The second one is productive and regenerative agriculture. In this, agriculture systems that are both productive and regenerative will combine traditional techniques such as crop rotation, controlled livestock grazing systems, and agroforestry with advanced precision farming technologies which support more judicious use of inputs including land, water, and synthetic and bio-based fertilizers and pesticides. So it will be gradual replacement of chemical fertilizers by bio-based fertilizers. Protecting and restoring nature. Nature must be protected and restored. This requires an end to the conversion of forests and other natural ecosystems and massive investment in restoration at a scale. Approximately 300 million hectares of tropical forests need to be put into restoration by 2030 because there have been large-scale destruction of forests in the tropical regions. And then a healthy, productive ocean. Under this, sustainable fishing and aquaculture can deliver increased supply of ocean proteins, reducing demand for land and supporting healthier and more diverse diets. This is only possible if essential habitats, that is estuaries, wetlands, mangrove forest and coral reefs are protected and restored, and if nutrient and plastic pollution are curbed. Next is diversifying protein supply. Under this, rapid development of diversified source of protein would complement the global transition to healthy diets. Diversification of human protein supply falls into 4 main categories, that is aquatic, plant-based, insect-based and laboratory culture. These last 3 sources alone could account for up to 10% of global protein market by 2030 and are expected to scale rapidly. Reducing food loss and waste, this is once again a major concern all over the globe, And in fact, in our country also, there are different organizations who are working so that food loss can be reduced. Approximately 1/3 of food produced is lost or wasted. So a huge amount of food that's being lost or wasted. To produce this food that is never eaten by people requires an agriculture area almost the size of the United States. Reducing food loss and waste by just 25% would therefore lead to significant benefits relating to environment, health, inclusion, and food security. So one can imagine the kind of benefits that we can get if we can reduce food loss and waste. Talking about local loops and linkages, with 80% of food project to be consumed in cities by 2050. So cities, we know that now half of the world population lives in urban areas, and increasingly more and more people will be living in the urban areas. So 80% of the food is projected to be consumed in cities by 2050. So what urban dwellers choose to eat and how their needs are supplied will largely shape food and land use systems. This transition sets out the opportunity to strengthen and scale efficient and sustainable local food economies in towns and cities. Now, coming to harnessing digital revolution, all of us are into it. Now, we are attending the webinar because of this digital revolution. So it can be make use of for better food and land use also. So digitization of food and land use systems is occurring through gene editing techniques, precision farming and logistics, and digital marketing tools, enabling producers and consumers to make better, more informed choices and to connect to the value chain rapidly and efficiently. And we also need to build stronger rural livelihoods. Underlying all 10 critical transitions is a vision of rural areas transformed into places of hope and opportunity. Now, rural areas, particularly in the developing parts of the world, is considered to be areas of despair because of lack of employment, income, or access to a different sort of facility that one can look for. But this way, this cannot go. We need to improve the conditions which are there in the rural areas. So while thriving communities can adapt to new challenges, need to protect and regenerate natural capital and invest in a better future, ensuring a just transition. And finally, the 10th transition that we are looking for is women can be enormously powerful in shaping food and land use system, because they are the people who usually take decision in terms of food consumption at home. So they are the major agents in terms of making choices. So thanks to their central role in agriculture and in decisions concerning nutrition, health, and family planning, making sure women have equal access to resources such as land, labor, water, credit, and other services should be central to policies concerning the 10 critical transitions, including by accelerating the demographic transition to a replacement rate of fertility in all countries. That means replacement rate of fertility is 2 per woman. That means on an average, every woman should not have more than 2 children. So this is how this can be done. So there are 10 critical transitions that have been suggested so that food and land use system can be transformed for the better future. Now, what these 10 critical transitions can deliver? Okay, firstly, it can deliver better environment. Benefit to be achieved include becoming net carbon neutral, contributing up to 1/3 of the mitigation needed for the 1.5 degrees Celsius climate pathways recommended by scientists and the Paris Agreement, halting biodiversity loss, restoring ocean fish stocks, and bringing about an 80% reduction in air pollution caused by food and land use system. Better health. It will also lead to better health because of a convergence of mix of food this carbohydrate, protein, that can be more healthy, and that can also lead to reduction in the lifestyle related diseases. Inclusive development. The critical transition could boost income growth for the bottom 20% of the rural population, increase yields of low productivity smallholders, create over 120 million extra decent rural jobs, and contribute to a more secure future for indigenous peoples and other local communities across the world. And food security. The transition could increase food security significantly by helping to stabilize or further improving the food production and the requirement of both quality and quantity of food. Now, by doing this, in fact, there are different models that have been worked on to see what better future scenarios could be there. So if these are being implemented, then in the better future scenarios, 1.2 billion hectares of land which is currently used for agriculture will be freed up for restoration and of natural ecosystems by 2050. Conversely, in the current trend scenario, a further 400 million hectares of natural ecosystem will be converted for agriculture. So the chart that we projected before you, each of these bars is showing different types of land use which is there, and then the area under it, and then you can see how these transitions can take place. So in current trends, here we have got current trends predict an increase of 400 million hectares of agricultural land in area twice the size of Mexico, while in the better futures, more than 1.5 billion hectares of agricultural land is spared. So land can be taken out of agriculture for other purposes. Now, in all this, the farmers have a very important role to play. As of now, farmers are not given that importance or that role to be played. In fact, in our own country, we have seen that there have been very good harvest, but at times due to lack of market or transportation facilities, they have to dump the produce that they had in their real fields. At times, they have to sell their produce at a very, very lower price. So all this needs to be changed because they are the entrepreneurs and they know better about what are the food requirements and how land needs to be used. So we have to focus in fact on farmers so that they can help in terms of bringing in the transition. So this indeed is mainly why we need to put such emphasis on changing the rules of the game and on shaping the game so that farmers are paid fairly to produce the right food in the right way. This includes allocating risk, that is market, weather, production, in ways that do not leave farmer carrying most of the risk that's happening today. If there's a high rain or the flood, then the farmer do carry their risk. While getting the list of the returns, and in terms of return, we know that they have to suffer a loss due to high rainfall or floods or extreme events, and protecting their tenure and giving them confidence to make longer term investments and improving opportunities for women and younger farmers while respecting their experience in land stewardship and food production. So farmers are nature entrepreneurs and they play a very critical role in the entire land use system. So we need to have a proper system so that they can play a critical role. Now, people, can you please tell me how much more time do I have? People, if you can hear me, how much more time do I have?
So 6 more minutes, sir.
6 more minutes. Okay. Yes. I'll try to briefly talk about the urban land in fact. Quickly, what we know is that I said earlier that half of the world population now is living in urban areas. Now, in fact, more and more people from developing parts of the world is being added to the urban population as compared to the developed world. So the level of urbanization, that means share of population out of total population living in the urban areas, is higher in the developed part of the world. But in terms of absolute numbers, more people are added to urban population from the developing part of the world as compared to the developed part of the world. So it's creating considerable expansion of urban areas, and it's not that there's an expansion of the area, but those who are living in urban areas, what do they eat, in fact, do determine the kind of land use we take note of. In fact, I can give you a good example. What has happened that due to rise of income in China, among the people of China, there's a great demand of pork in China. Now, the supply of pork is not fulfilled by China itself. So what happens is that now soybean is being cultivated in some areas of Brazil, so that this can be fed to the pigs, and then they can be transported to China, or the processed meat can be transported to the China. So the change in food habit of a country far off leads to change in land use in a different country. So this kind of connections that we have in terms of consumption habits of people living in the urban areas and the land use change that is taking place in far off area is true with the meat consumption in USA. In order to fulfill the demand of meat in US, a number of countries in Southeast Asia raise cattle, and to feed them, certain land has to be dedicated for this. So it's leading to land use changes. So consumption in a particular urban place or in a country leads to changes in far off places, maybe transcontinental or to different parts of localities. So it's a very increasingly becoming areas of concern. So I'll just say that in India, in fact, in between 2000 and 2011, what we know is that when you talk about the increase in population, for the first time in India's history, the growth in urban population in absolute terms, in absolute numbers, in urban areas have been higher than the rural areas. So there's a large number of people who are now living in urban areas. So I'll not go into detail of this, how many towns are there. This slide is showing how rate of urbanization increasing in India from 10.8% in 1991 to 31.2% in 2011. And this table and chart basically shows differential growth rates between rural and urban areas. So if you see the digital growth rate in the rural area of India in between 2011, it was just 12.18%, while in urban areas it's 31.80%. So one can imagine the kind of growth of population taking place in urban areas. Once again, I'm not going into detail with this. This is a map of Bangalore. It's quite interesting because if you see the area of Bangalore, which is in the center in the red color, in 1537, Bangalore has an area of just 1.85 kilometers, below 2 kilometers. And now, as per 2011, Bangalore had an area of 530.85 square kilometers. And all these colors are showing how Bangalore has expanded aerially over different years. So if you kind of interested, I can forward this slide to you. It really shows how urban areas are encroaching on agricultural land. So this is a Bangalore city in 2011. Also, one can see the expansion which is taking place all across the into the agricultural lands. So in order to understand what's happening in the urban areas and how land is being kind of converted, or how land is changing in different locations, there are different concepts that we make use of. So I think due to lack of time, I won't be able to go into details. So what I'll be saying is that often we do consider a urban area or urban place as a bounded place. We always try to see what's happening within the boundary, or at the most we go to the periphery of a city, saying how land use is changing in the peripheries. In fact, any city, when you take note of, it has a larger teleconnections. Teleconnections means one thing is located in a particular area, but in a way, this is connected to different locations. The way I gave you the example of China's pork consumption. So we need to understand all these relations, that how, say, the increase in urban population is leading to changes in urban land. So there are different conceptual frameworks. Initially, we used to consider urban separately as a discrete category, rural as a discrete category. Then now increasingly, we'll be suggesting that we need to consider urban and rural as a continuum of land uses, because it's not that land use abruptly changes and then another land use starts. In fact, it has larger implications for a very, very large geographical area. And this is a model about urban land teleconnections. So it's possible that should I stop, Vipul? Okay, so I'll just take 2 minutes. In fact, what happens is that it's possible that the demands which are there in the urban center may have impact on other places or other countries. But it may be limited in terms of land use. For example, when mobile phones are being produced, it may be produced in different countries, but in terms of land use, it may be less. On the other hand, if one talks about food supplies, then what we know is that to cater to a section of population in a city, there are wide connections of areas all across the globe in terms of land use. So I'm not going to detail. There's a study of Siliguri also which suggests that how demands in Siliguri for flour is leading to change in land use in the say rural areas which are almost 150 kilometers away from Siliguri. So what we are trying to say is that teleconnections between urban center and far off rural areas. So in order to understand how land use changes are taking place and how it will be impacted by urban areas, we need to have an integrated approach to understand this. So both we need to combine the impact of agriculture on land use systems, particularly of food, as well as we also need to understand how urbanization is driving land use changes. So I shall stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your insightful and very thoughtful presentation, sir. Before wasting much time, we'll just take few questions which our audience, which our participants have,
There seems to be some technical problem encountered by Sir Bipul. So as he was continuing, he wanted to take up some questions that the participants have typed in our chat box. So since he is facing some problem, I may continue with picking up some questions from the participants. So,
yeah, please go ahead. Yeah, I'll be happy to respond to questions. Yeah.
Okay, Sir Bipul is back, so over to him. Sir Bipul, please kindly unmute yourself. Okay, he left again. I think he's having some technical issue.
In the meantime, you can read out the question if possible.
Chetraj Sharma, how the food or the land use systems will help in controlling the impacts of climate change by 2030? What are the better options?
Can you please repeat the question? I could not get the full question in it. Yeah.
How the food or land use systems will help in controlling the impacts of climate change by 2030? What are the better options? The question is from Chetraj Sharma.
Okay. In fact, there are different ways, and different countries have to respond to it differently. Say in our country, we can reduce the use of chemical fertilizers, and we also need to see that the degradation that has taken place in agricultural land, particularly the degradation in topsoil due to use of chemical fertilizers, that should be reduced. In fact, there are proposal that one needs to also reduce the subsidy that's there in chemical fertilizers, so that people can be increasingly switched to organic manure. In fact, before the introduction of these chemical fertilizers, people generally in our country used to use this organic manure. So one needs to once again pay attention to that part, and then farmers should be also encouraged to do that. And there are a number of techniques now through which the organic manures can be produced. So if the farmers be trained, that can help them to do that. So this is one way how one can do that. Secondly, I was talking about food loss and waste. In our country also, there's huge food loss that one can save. In fact, we know ourselves that how food is being wasted at household level also. So with awareness, possible that this food waste can be reduced. So I think there are some measures through which one can improve the health of the land. Similarly, irrigation practices in our country, when we talk about efficiency of irrigation, is not very high. So it's possible to increase the efficiency of irrigation so that water can be also conserved. Yeah, this is my answer. Thank you.
Another question is from Manomita Sarkar. It also includes it will also include a question from Chetra Sharma. So the question is, in West Bengal, after implementation of land reform, agricultural lands are fragmented and cooperative systems are not functioning properly. So it basically talks about fragmentation of land. In this situation, how the modern agriculture system will be introduced, sir?
In fact, I talked about fragmentation of land at all India level, and the situation is more chronic in West Bengal. So what has happened is that now there are a very large number of marginal farmers in West Bengal. But as of now, there had not been any initiative for what you call as consolidating the land holdings which are there. And cooperative farming has been a distant dream. As of today, I don't think there's any serious effort that has been made to bring in cooperative farming. Recently, what has happened is that a number of corporates are trying to bring in cooperative farming by consolidating the land of the people who are there, and that has been registered because farmers are thinking that they may lose their land rights, or they may also lose the income that they are having now. So as of now, the cooperative movement in terms of land consolidation and production in land has been very, very weak or almost absent, in fact, in West Bengal.
This one question is, I think this is the last question we will take. This one is from Noel Giri. So he asks, how sustainable use of food and land system can achieve nutritious food, health, or better immune system in respect to the current scenario of COVID-19 infection, considering the local communities, demography, and land use pattern of the northeastern hills?
When we talk about healthy diets, it's not necessary that one needs to have, say, very good income to have a healthy diet. By healthy diet, what we mean is that one needs to have good mix of cereals, fibers, and it's also possible that one can have protein from plants. It's not necessarily that one needs to have protein from meat consumption, or say fish, river has been main source of fish for the people, particularly West Bengal, Assam. So if the ecosystems which are there in river that can be restored, today a lot of rivers are also being polluted to a very large extent, and as a result of this, one does not get the kind of catch that people used to have earlier. And we also know that in a number of areas, West Bengal earlier, there used to be floods, and floods used to bring fresh, fertile soil, or there will be also fish that would be coming, and people in the villages would be catching that fish so that they can take it as a protein. So one needs to have awareness in terms of what kind of food that one needs to take so that it can lead to a healthier diet. In fact, what happens is that in the absence of proper awareness, people do take lots of sugar, even if somebody has a low income. So we know that consumption of certain things, though, should not be the food basket, but it's part of it. So if proper awareness is there in terms of what is it that needs to be taken as a healthy food, I think people may change their food habits.
We may take two more questions, very interesting questions, because we have some time. One is from Diksha Chetri. Will the implication of organic fertilizer be able to meet the ever-increasing demand of Indian population?
Yeah, this is a big question, in fact, and once again, it requires lots of effort and long-term effort. Now, if we can consistently try for this and give time to convert from, say, chemical fertilizer-based agricultural practices to organic-based agricultural practices, it may happen because people, when you go even to rural area now, people do realize that the chemicals are wrong, and when they take food, people do suffer from different health diseases, and the kind of frequency with which people do suffer from different diseases, I think they have started realizing this is something which is not good. And in fact, when I go to a village, I hear from a number of farmers that earlier the kind of mosquitoes that they get now at home were not there. So possibly due to usage of chemical fertilizers, mosquitoes or insects have started to fly from agricultural fields to the households. So I think it's possible to have it, but once again, it requires long-term planning, both on the part of government. It also requires very significant participation of farmers. It also requires cooperation from the people. So hopefully, if we can do that, then we can move towards that part. I think we can make a beginning. I'm not saying that it can be done in 20 years or 30 years time, but if we give a long-term, a longer time period, then possibly that will be possible. Now, we know that the kind of food demand which is there in our country, it's not possible as of now to produce through organic farming. In Sikkim, where I'm located, they have adopted organic farming, and the state claimed that all the food which is being consumed here will be organic, but that could not take place precisely because the production of organic food is less than the demand which is there. So in a small state like Sikkim, as of now, it has not been possible. So in a state which has very large population, it may take longer time. And since Green Revolution are primarily aimed at meeting the food needs of the people, Green Revolution really helped in terms of bringing in self-sufficiency and then the buffer stocks. And that continues to do so. But as I said during my talk, that it has also brought in significant environmental damage. So one can really look forward so that transition to take place in terms of the way we practice agriculture. That is the way forward to me.
One question we have from Father Principal. He asks, is it really true that agriculture is a cause for degradation of environment? Is it really true that agriculture is the cause for degradation of environment?
To some extent, as I said earlier, 30% of the greenhouse gas emissions are attributed to agriculture because of, say, usage of chemical fertilizers, because it emits methane, and methane is increasingly considered to be a source of carbon emission. So as we use more and more chemical fertilizers, and then it degrades soil, and then say the natural nutrients which are there in the soil, it also gets affected. So this is the reason why agriculture is also considered to be one of the contributors to the green gas emission. At least 30% of the green gas emissions are say reported to be coming from agriculture. Thank you, Father.
If we can take one last question, sir, that is from Nakul Chetri.
Yeah, sure.
He asks,
Yeah.
sir, you talked about population control to 2 children per family over food sustainability. Is the notion that agriculture practice needs more labor, which is why agricultural families have children, more number of children? So is it not? Is not what is the way of more? Okay, so he asks basically, it is believed that agriculture practice needs more labor, which is why agricultural families have more number of children. Is this notion true? And does it go along with your observation of having 2 children per family?
Okay, I hope that you are aware about this under kind of employment or disguised unemployment. In fact, a number of studies suggest that the labor input, which is there in different parts of the country, particularly in West Bengal, is much higher than the required. Now, what happens is that since people in rural areas do not have other employment, what do they do is that they become part of the family agricultural farms. So a farm may require just 2 laborers, but if there are 4 persons in the family who are in the working age group, all 4 will be working in the same agricultural farm because the other 2 do not have work. So what happens here is a disguised kind of unemployment which is there. So it will be wrong to say that we need more people to carry out agriculture. In fact, all the studies suggest that we have more labor than required for agriculture farm. Now, even if there's more requirement of labor, if the mechanization in terms of the irrigation practices or say uses of tractors, that may lead to reduction of labor force. But as of today, in fact, we have huge surplus labor in the agricultural sector.
Thank you so much, sir. It was indeed a very engaging interactive session. I hope the participants must have taken a lot from it as well. Can we have Father Principal to keep your observations about the session?
Thank you very much, Father.
We may take on the session now with the vote of thanks.
Very close to my heart. Salesian College is always close to my heart.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Father, for your valuable insights and appreciation. Your such appreciation, of course, always encourages us to look forward for such event. Every time you have been giving us opportunity of different forms. Thank you once again, Father. Now, let me take an opportunity, to on behalf of Department of Economics and Department of Geography and IQAC, Salesian College Siliguri campus, to extend vote of thanks to our honorable speaker of the day, Sir Sohail Firdaus, for having accepted our invitation. Thank you, sir, for gracing this webinar and sharing us your thought-provoking lecture. We are truly grateful to you, sir. I must mention deep sense of gratitude to our respected Father Professor George Thadatil, Principal and IQAC Chairman, Salesian College, Siliguri, for his presence and giving us the opportunity and platform. Thank you, Father, for always encouraging us to amplify our knowledge and for guiding us. Further, we are grateful to the VP, Vice Principal of Arts, Father George Sepakatanal, and Father Vice Principal of Science, Father Aju Kurian, for supporting us throughout this program. Lastly, I would also like to thank all our tech team, especially Ma'am Yadika, who has been there supporting us with different forms of technicalities that is indeed needed at this moment. Finally, we are thankful to all our wonderful participants and our dear students. This webinar would not have been possible without your participation. We hope to see you soon again in our upcoming next webinar series, that is tomorrow. And the speaker is Dr. Aaron Kingsbury. His lecture would be on urban communities in transition, case studies from Japan. So I invite you all for tomorrow's session. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you all.
Since sir is here, or he left. Sir, can you hear us? Okay, sir. Okay, since you are still here and we have one
Yes. Father, your voice is cracking. I see this from here. I think if question is here. Father, your voice is cracking. I'm not able to hear properly.
It's not from me. One of the participants, as I was speaking, was typing in, and you can see it there. I think it is by Suman Sarkar, asking me to place before you his question, which was there earlier on this question of environmental economics. Can you hear?
Yeah, I can see.
And I replied him saying we can always take it up with you. Yeah, since we are already closed. But if you would like to intervene for his sake, you're welcome.
I myself am not comfortable because different, say, environmental aspects are being commoditified. Say, for example, Dave Nathan proposes that people who are living the lower esteem should pay for the environmental services that are being provided in the upper sticks or in the hills. Though the environmental economics does lots of modeling in terms of once again what we call as inputs, outputs. If there are certain things which goes into it, then what would be the output? So those are interesting work from the perspective of economics. There's no doubt about but surely there are concrete economic benefits that may come if we seriously. So we need to have transformation. Which are economical benefits also. People have to spend less on their healthcare facility. So there are economic benefits that may accrue, rather it will accrue in fact, from the transition that we are talking. So our number of economics have worked in that direction. So those are very appreciable. Lots of commodification of particularly ecosystem services at with which
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Father.
okay, thank you. So I can leave it. Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have a good day.
Good day. Same to you. Thank you so much. Have a good lunch and wish you were here and we could have had the lunch together. Yes.
Canada, and then we had good discussions starting with breakfast table. So we miss and the walks that I had with you.
Yeah. Well, let's wait for the better times that are surely on the way.
Yes, definitely, Father. You all are doing great job. So
yeah.
I'm really very happy about the.
Yeah, thank you for appreciating our students. Yeah, that's great. Okay then.
Thank you very
Bye.
much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.